Chapter 16. Caught. As the day grew older, the circus got steadily busier and busier. Agnart found that she had a lot less time to just stand around chatting to Race. She had to put on a show for those who had come to see her. Agnart had a series of set pieces that she would perform in a random order each hour. Then, at the end of the hour, she was afforded a short break of about 5 minutes. She could pretty much do as she liked, as long as she stayed in the enclosure. Now that the circus was open, the owners didn't want a harpy walking about the aisles and spooking the customers. Normally, Agnart would spend her 5 minutes sitting on a large bale of straw near the fence, and she would chat to Race or to other members of the crowd if there should be any questions. Sometimes, if she found it necessary, she would disappear behind a group of boards located at the back of the enclosure in order to deal with other business. The more Race watched Agnart at work, the more certain he was that he loved her. He liked to just watch her, and he loved to chat to her. Agnart was his ideal woman. The crowds came and went. For most of the day, Race was going to have to share Agnart with the visitors of the circus. He didn't mind that too much. He knew that come the evening, he would have her all to himself. What irritated Race most were the number of insults that the crowd seemed to feel free to aim at the harpy during her display. Agnart didn't look up and didn't acknowledge the comments. She just got on with the task at hand as if such people were beneath her notice. On the other hand, there were a few in the crowd who, like Race, actually seemed to have some respect for the harpy, or at least for her skill. It felt good to Race when he heard someone aim a compliment at his lady love. "Do you stop for lunch?" Race asked. The sun was high in the sky. It couldn't be all that much longer until lunch. Race was feeling very hungry himself, as the last meal he had been the leftovers of the meat Agnart had given him. "I get half an hour for lunch," Agnart told him, "but I'm not supposed to leave the enclosure. If they remember, someone will be along with something for me to eat and drink." "And if they don't remember?" Race asked. "Then I'll starve until the circus closes, which it doesn't do until it's too dark for me to see the targets," Agnart replied. "Don't worry. It's rare for anyone to forget. I'm a valuable asset." "Want me to get you something?" Race asked. "No," Agnart replied. "You aren't a member of the circus. They will charge you for your meal, even if you're fetching it for me. Best if we wait until lunch is delivered." It wasn't a long wait until the food arrived. One of the circus workers brought a hefty-looking leg of pork through to the enclosure and handed it to Agnart as if he and she were old acquaintances. He was also carrying a small sign which he hung on the fence of the enclosure. It read, "Harpy at lunch, back in 30. Agnart broke a piece of the meat off and handed it to Race. The meat was cold, but it had been cooked. "Thank you," Race told her. "You're my guest," Agnart replied. "I'm not going to let you starve. Tonight we'll see someone about making you an official member of the circus, and then we won't have to share." The signal for lunch to be over was when the same man who had brought the food and put the sign on the fence came to collect the sign. He gave Race a funny look, as if surprised to see him still there. Then he departed on another errand without saying a word. "Back to work," Agnart said, climbing to her feet. She rubbed her hands on the bale of straw to remove any residual grease, and then she grabbed her bow and began to set up for her first shot. The crowd started to filter back almost immediately. It was now close to the end of the next hour after lunch. Agnart was just performing the trick where she aimed to deflect an arrow of a badly dented old bathtub that was hanging on a wall of straw on the side of the enclosure. Race watched her carefully. He loved every movement she made. Every time she turned, her skirt flew up just a little, and part of him hoped that she would show him more of herself. He had seen her make this shot several times already that morning, yet it still amazed him that even with magic assisting her skill, she never missed. "She's very good," one of the people in the crowd commented. There was a familiar tone to the voice. Race glanced round and saw his father standing right behind him. He was dressed in his full knight's armour, his helm tucked under his arm. He hadn't come alone. Also there was Race's mother, looking more than a little upset at her son, Jenny, looking more like the lady she was every day, and Greyful, also in full plate armour and carrying a kite shield, keeping his eye on the harpy in the enclosure as if he expected her to attack at any moment. Sir Grant and Anida were also there. They too were both wearing plate armour. They were hovering towards the back of the crowd. In Florif, it was unusual to see a woman dressed in any sort of armour, but in the last few months Anita had effectively been made a deputy trainer. She didn't really do a lot of training herself, as few were willing to take instruction from a woman, but she did all she could to assist her father. Now, when Ray saw her dressed in armour, he didn't even think twice about it. "So this is your girlfriend?" the Duke asked. "This is Agnart, father," Race revealed. Not knowing what else to say, he turned his head back to the enclosure and closed his eyes in readiness for the angry onslaught. Agnart didn't look around. She raised her hand only to show that she had heard, and then she got on with her neck shut. "Horse and tiger race," Jenny exploded. "Whatever were you thinking?" "We've been worried sick," the Duke intoned. He kept his voice calm and measured. In fact, the Duke rarely seemed to get angry with any of his children these days. "Do you know how much trouble you've caused? We searched the entire castle looking for you. Twice! Fortunately, the guards on duty at the gate remembered you leaving suddenly in the middle of the night. Strange thing, though. They both say they tried to talk you out of it, but remember opening the gates for you anyway." "I suggested that we would probably find you here," Jenny confessed, "knowing how taken you were with her last time we were here." "And here you are," Rayforth commented angrily. "With this," he paused to find the right word, "thing. You used magic to bewitch the guards, you naughty boy," Jenny said with a grin. "Yes," Greyforth commented to Jenny, "like you'd never do anything like that." Jenny smiled to herself and looked coy. "I'm very sorry, father," Race replied. He cast his eyes downward. "I had to get away to see Agnard again. I couldn't get her out of my mind." "Well," Greyforth offered, not looking happy, "now you've seen her, go get your pony and we can leave." "You should have asked first," Jenny suggested. "I'm sure father would have allowed it." "I did ask," Race said sadly. "You asked me if we could take her on as an archery teacher," the Duke chided. "I would have had nothing against you coming back to see her." I, Race started to stutter. Agnart brought her current session to a close. She took a seat on the bale of straw not too far from the front fence of the enclosure, and announced loudly to no one in particular, "Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Now I need a quick rest before I can continue. All this walking tires a harpy out, you know." There were a few murmured giggles from the audience. "I'll be back on my feet again in about 5 minutes' time, if anyone wants to wait or return. In the meantime, I'm willing to answer any civil questions you may have about my skill." "I hope you had a good time," Greyforth growled. He didn't look at Race, but kept his eyes on the harpy at all times. "I did, brother," Race admitted, his eyes still downcast. "Well," the Duchess said, trying to calm the situation, "I guess that's something." "We really ought to be heading back now," Greyforth insisted. He looked at Agnart and his hand instinctively rested on the hilt of his sword. "Can I stay, father?" Race asked. He didn't seem to notice how fidgety Greyforth had suddenly become. "No," the Duke replied tersely. "Greyforth is right. We should be getting back. Besides, I'm not about to reward your behaviour." "If I stay, Agnart promised to teach me the harpy language," Race revealed hopefully. "I'd really love to learn how to speak harpy, father. It's such a beautiful language." "It's an ugly language," Greyforth countered. "Besides, you can't trust the harpy." "Shush!" Jenny muttered to her older brother. Greyforth peered down his nose at his sister, affecting an air of superiority. "Oh, did she?" the Duke uttered in answer to Race's comment. "Well, I suppose it would make sense that a harpy would know the tongue." The Duke turned his attention to Agnart. "You, harpy girl." Agnart looked round at her audience. It was clear she had been listening in on the conversation, but nevertheless she answered with a stern, "What?" Then her eyes lighted on the one who had spoken, and acting as if she was only just recognizing the speaker, she now said, "Forgive me, my Duke." She got up from the bale of straw and performed a quick curtsy that looked more like a parody of something she might have once seen. "I had no idea it was you." She then returned to her seat on the straw, the expression on her face suggesting that she wasn't impressed. "Did you inform my son that you would teach him your language?" the Duke asked. "Be very careful what you say to her, father," Jenny warned. "She's very intelligent." "Intelligent? A harpy?" Greyforth muttered. She was able to work out certain things about Race fairly quickly. She knows his secret. I do? Agnark questioned, feigning innocence. She then glanced towards Jenny and gave her a quick, knowing smile. Race shuffled uncomfortably in his chair, wishing he understood the meaning of the glances that Agnark and Jenny seemed to be exchanging. Then Agnark addressed the Duke, answering his original question. Yes, I can teach him, assuming I'm given enough time to work with him. How long is it until the circus moves on? The Duke asked casually. The owners of the circus don't usually confide with me before they make their plans, Agnark replied sarcastically. Then, in a more civil tongue, she added, However, we rarely stay anywhere for more than about a month, and we've been here for 2 weeks already. 2 weeks? Doesn't sound like very long to teach a language, the Duke commented. It isn't, Agnark replied, polishing her bow. It's a simple language, but I'd only be working with him in the evenings, and although I could give him a very basic understanding of the language within those 2 weeks, I wouldn't be able to teach him much more than a few simple words. You know, girl, woman, you, me, it, she, her, they, and the like. Boy, man, the Duchess suggested. No, Agnark replied sharply, and then easing her tongue she continued, Such words have no equivalent in the Harpy language, at least not that I'm aware. There are no male pronouns, though I have heard some like to borrow such terms from the Elven or Yagnokan tongue. I see, the Duke accepted. What if you were to teach him full time? Agnark grinned. You'd need to convince the bosses of the circus first. They tolerate me because of my skills. I'm one of the main attractions here. I pull in the customers. Not many people are going to be attracted to a show where all I'm doing is teaching a young boy to speak my language. Besides, I think I'd still need a couple of months to teach him properly, even full time. Leave him with me. Next time the circus returns to this area, I should have him speaking like a native. For some reason, her last comment seemed to amuse her. What do you think, Race? The Duke asked. I'm willing, Father, Race said eagerly. Well, I don't like it, Grateful spat angrily. He took his hand off his sword. Race is still very young, and he's very impressionable. If he were to spend a couple of years in her company, she could destroy him. We'd lose our brother and get a human-hating monster into the bargain. How could you believe that? Race asked, scandalised. I don't like it either, the Duke agreed. He's not been with us long. She could turn him. Turn me? Race protested. I don't understand. Jenny knelt down beside Race's chair and explained. You're already obsessed with harpies. Father and Greyfulf are scared that if you spend too much time with a harpy, and only a harpy, you'll begin to think like one. And that's wrong because? Agnark asked insistently. And besides, what happens to all your other classes while you're here? Greyfulf asked, his voice actually sounding a little softer than it had. The Duke nodded. Yes, it's not really an option. Besides, your mother would kill me. He glanced across at his wife. Agnark sighed. Her 5-minute break was over. She got up, walked to the end of the enclosure and positioned the bucket for the first shot of the next hour. What if we took her with us? Ray suggested hopefully. He expected the same answer he had gotten when he had requested pretty much the same thing yesterday. Out of the question, Greyfulf growled. Your brother is right, dear, the Duchess spoke. This harpy wouldn't be safe beyond the confines of the circus. She'd be easy prey for anyone. Not if she got a ducal escort, Jenny suggested. Jenny, Greyfulf hissed. No, Jenny countered. I'm serious. I think I'd quite like to learn the harpy tongue as well. I think it might prove useful. If nothing else, it would be fun. It changes nothing, the Duke replied gruffly. Outside of the circus she would be putting her life on the line, not to mention what will happen when the king finds out I was harbouring a creature of evil. Anyway, Greyfulf added, I saw the notice on the door even if no one else did. They can't sell any of their exhibits. It would be against the law for them to do so. Agnark hit the bullseye with her latest shot, and then she walked slowly over to the fence. She coughed politely and said, Actually, that notice is just there to satisfy the law. I'm pretty sure if I know Beresford as well as I think I know him, he'd sell his own grandmother for the right price. She then returned to her display as if she hadn't said a word. See, Jenny said. Besides, who is it that makes the laws in the moth? The king does, Greyfulf responded. Our father just carries them out. If we get caught with even one harpy in the castle, do you realise how much trouble father would be in? Well, it wouldn't exactly be without precedent, the Duchess commented. She patted Race meaningfully on his shoulder. Are you suggesting we should try and buy this harpy from the circus? The Duke asked, looking accusingly at his wife. I just said it wouldn't be without precedent, the Duchess responded. The Duke sighed and nodded. He then rested a hand gently on Greyfall's shoulder. You know, son, for a while now I've been thinking that I want to give someone I can trust the governorship of Leamington. Our family has a large home there, but we've never used it. I think, maybe, it's time that you were given a little bit of responsibility, with an eye to the day when you have to take up the reins as Duke. Don't do this, Father, Greyfall pleaded. It's a great honour. It means a lot of power, and it'll give you and your children a lot more living space, the Duke told him. You just want me out of the way because you know I'm the voice of reason here, Greyfall protested. Please, son, the Duke insisted. Take your bodyguard and go look at Leamington. The house is towards the northern end of the city. It's a nice large house. It has a central courtyard and everything. Perhaps we should make arrangements for you and Alicia to try the place out for a month or so. Father, please don't, Greyfall cried. Go and take a look, the Duke insisted, speaking to him gently. Then, if we do anything silly, you won't be responsible for it. Greyfall nodded slowly. Please think carefully before you do anything you might regret. He turned and walked slowly away from the harpy enclosure. Well, I can't say I'm sad to see him go, Agnark commented. He was making me nervous. That's my son, the Duke replied. Agnark ignored the Duke. Instead, she addressed Race. Tell me, did you have any trouble with your brother when you were younger? Perhaps he had a strange hatred for you that seemed to have no root cause. A little, Race admitted. It seemed hard for him to accept me as a member of the family. His attitude towards me changed before I was 2, though. Why? It just makes sense, Agnark replied. She didn't take her eyes off what she was doing. That's all. The Duke looked at all those gathered watching the spectacle of a harpy with a bow and sighed. Then he spoke. Okay, folks, I'm sorry to have to do this, but the harpy is taking a break for 10 minutes, possibly longer. The show is over for now. Hey, Agnark protested. You can't do that. Can't I? The Duke responded. I want to talk to you, and I don't want what I'm about to say to be overheard by just about anybody. Anita and her father were already ushering people away from the enclosure. Go on, Sir Grant was telling them. Give the Duke some room. The crowd dispersed fairly quickly, although not without few muttered comments, especially from one who had paid to get in, just to watch the harpy shoot. Once the immediate area seemed fairly clear, Anita and Sir Grant took up positions to intercept and redirect anyone else who might be thinking of visiting the harpy. What's your name, harpy? The Duke called. It's Agnark, Race interjected. Agnark, the Duke said. Would you be willing to leave the circus if I was to employ you as a language teacher for my son? Agnark looked the Duke in the eye. I'm not doing this because I like the company. She turned so that he could have a good look at her back. Look what they did to my lovely wings. You think I want to stay in a place like this if there's an alternative? You better take any opportunity to get away from this place. Not at the cost of my life, though. What if I could guarantee your safety? The Duke asked. Well, then I'd jump at it like a shot, Agnark replied. She glanced at Race and smiled. Yes, it would be nice to be with someone I can respect, and to teach them the basics of my language. What do you want in exchange? The Duke asked. What would any slave want? Agnark replied. Freedom. I want the freedom to go anywhere I want within your castle. I will respect private rooms, obviously. Maybe I'd like to look at the world from the top of the battlements occasionally, and try to remember a time when I could fly. Then, when my task is done, and your child is fluent, I want to be released from my captivity. If I agreed, the Duke asked dubiously, where would you go? I don't intend to go anywhere, Agnark replied. I have no wings. I wouldn't survive 5 minutes in harpy society. I just want to die knowing that I'm a trusted friend to Race, and not a slave of the family. I want to die free. Your request sounds reasonable to me, the Duke agreed. Race hated to make the comment, but he would hate to lose Agnark more, so he had to force the words out. I want Agnar as a teacher. I want her to be free. But how can we give her the run of the castle? The moment anyone sees her, they'll try and kill her. Well, Ginny coughed, Mangloss has certain magical powers. He could, she coughed again, make her a talisman of some type that would hide her true appearance from anyone who sees her. The Duke nodded. She'd still be a harpy. We would have to keep a careful eye on her. She could be prone to trying to double-cross us. Hey, Agnar called. I'm right here, you know. On the other hand, she could be quite an asset. Perhaps we should give her a try run and see how it goes. If we find we can trust her, we'll see about letting her go in the course of things. Thank you, Father, Race said. Yes, Father, Jenny echoed. Thank you. Fair enough, the Duke said. So, assuming I was willing to hire you as a language teacher, what would it take for me to release you from the circus? Agnar turned to face the Duke again. Knowing what the owners of the circus are like, I would think money, and lots of it. I'd never really thought about it before, though. It's not as if they would let me buy my own freedom. However, when you realise that the owners are too cheap to have that many real creatures because they cost too much to feed, it doesn't take much to realise that money is all they really care about. So the animals are all fake? Ray said, surprised. Most of them, Agnar responded. They have a real lion, and I think the wyvern is real, and there are a few others scattered about the circus. As for the others, I'm not even sure half of them exist even in the real world. Take the manticore, for example. She pointed at the creature in the nearby cage. A native of Tumboku. Well, where even is that? She turned her attention back to the Duke. If you're serious, all I can suggest is you go and chat with the boss of the circus about me. Be warned, he really is a nasty, money-grabbing little goblin. A goblin? Jenny said, startled. Figure of speech, Agnar replied. Where can I find him? The Duke asked. The harpy suddenly looked quite hopeful. Go to the middle aisle. There are a number of tents down there where the non-freaks spend their nights. The owner of the circus will be in the largest and most elaborate of the tents. He goes by the name of Glaric Beresford, but everyone just calls him the boss. Great, the Duke voiced. Are you coming, Race? I'll stay, thanks, Father, Race replied. If you don't get him to agree, then I might not get another chance to see Agnar. I'll stay here for now. Don't worry, Agnar assured them. I'll look after the little chief while you're gone. I'm sure you will, the Duke commented. Race watched them leave. He felt his heart sing at the thought that his father was actually going to try and buy the harpy. Anida and Sir Grant followed Jenny and the Duke, leaving only Race and his mother at the enclosure. Breardine placed her hands gently on his shoulders and began to massage them. It was clear to him just how much she had missed the little boy.